Around 1,200 NHS staff have called on the health service to reinstate the word woman onto its website. The NHS uses words like you and people instead of woman in advice on subjects like the menopause and childbirth, which is, I think we can all agree, a bit bonkers, really. But a large number of doctors, nurses and health practitioners have now asked for the NHS to make the change back to woman. I'm joined now by Joanna Williams, who's the head of education and culture at the Policy Exchange. Joanna, bring women back.
Absolutely. I think what's really shocking is that the word woman was ever taken off all these websites in the first place. Whoever thought this was a good idea clearly needs to go back to medical school, because they didn't learn anything about basic biology and what it actually means to be female, to be a woman. They also don't know anything about language, because when you're dealing with medical situations, it's actually quite dangerous, I think, to remove the word woman, because it alienates people. I mean, you said that the word woman's been replaced by you and people. I find that actually preferable to other examples I've seen where the word woman's replaced with things like uterus haver or vagina owner, which are incredibly insulting terms. And for people for whom English is not their first language, you might not even realise that this is something that's referring to you.
But isn't it dehumanising? That's the thing. I mean, women are much more than just, I can't believe I'm saying this, uterus havers, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's dehumanising, it's insulting. I mean, for me, the worst one in the examples of these websites that's been picked up is referring to women who have suffered a miscarriage, which is one of the hardest things that a woman can ever go through in her life. And the idea that even off that, the word woman is removed, and it now talks about people who have suffered a miscarriage. I mean, that's just insulting in the extreme, that anybody sat there and thought that this was a good idea.
But that's the point, That's the point, sorry, because when you look at, woke culture or whatever the heck this is, infiltrating things like schools and children being brought up with this tosh from the age of about 4. And then you think, well, maybe the medical community, where sound medical biological fact will at least be preserved, would not do stuff like this. But clearly someone who's, I dare say, maybe on 100 grand plus a year, who sits as the diversity czar or whatever they are in the NHS at the taxpayer's expense, has somehow managed to say, well, it's offensive to people if we decide to call them a woman pretty much on their medical records. And that's just been allowed to happen. And, I mean, that, Joanna, I think should be a massive concern to women everywhere. It turns out, Joanna, that maybe, and I hate to say this, it's quite easy to erase women.
Well, absolutely. And given that it's International Women's Day tomorrow, and we'll all be being told to go out and kind of celebrate that, you know, it's just so insulting. But, you know, I do think there is a little bit of a good news story in this as well. And for me, the good news is that 1,000 doctors and nurses have written a letter, have complained about this, and have got on the NHS's case. They've said they're not prepared to put up with this and they want the word woman reinstated. Now, my guess is that even a year ago, that might not have been the case, that might not have happened. And it does seem positive that more people do feel prepared and confident now to be able to speak back and challenge this. So I think you're absolutely right. It should never, ever have happened in the first place. Totally disgusting that it did. But I think it is good that people are challenging it.
There's definitely been a pushback, and I want to know from you what you think has happened, because I think for a significant period of time, people were scared off by words like transphobe or TERF or whatever. And I actually think there's been a bit of a line in the sand drawn for one reason or another, and a lot of women are saying, no, I am a woman and I'm going to stand up for this. Why do you think there's been this shift?
Yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that that's taken place. And I think it's thanks to some really brave women who are in the public eye, people like J.K. Rowling, Maya Forstater, Kathleen Stock, Helen Joyce, women who've taken a hell of a lot of abuse on social media. I mean, J.K. Rowling famously has received enough death threats, she says, to be able to paper her entire house, which I'm sure is quite a big house as well. But I think it's thanks to women like that who really, you know, are at risk of undermining the biology of what we're talking about here. Women with balls, I would say, who've really put their neck on the line and really been able to push back. And I think they've opened the space for other people to be able to join them and stick their head above the parapet too. I think too often these woke zealots get away with it because they assume everybody else is going to have moral cowardice and not dare to speak out.